Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. I like to introduce Swami Chidananda. He was very gracious enough last year also when we approached for him to speak on Bhagavan or on his teachings. I will give a brief description of Swami Chidananda. He has been a speaker, a writer, and teacher of spiritual topics for nearly 3 decades. He is the founder of a non-government organization engaged in dialogues in human values, promotion of spiritual studies. At the age of 23, he was inspired by the eloquent discourses of the famous Vedanta teacher, Swami Chinmayananda. He put aside a career in electronics engineering and went on to study Upanishads. He studied at his guru's ashram in Mumbai between 1984 and 86, and thereafter served the master institution Chinmaya Mission for 16 years, between 1986 and 2002. He was the resident Acharya in San Jose, and I had the good fortune of hearing him sometime in the middle of 1990s. He was always very humble, gracious, and very, very open to all ideas of Vedanta. In 1984, he chanced upon Arthur Osborne's book, The Teachings of Sri Ramana Maharshi, in his own words. He never looked back and has remained a devotee of Bhagavan since then. He, however, went on to study the Upanishads in detail and got involved in J. Krishnamurti's teachings too. Between 1993 and 98, he was the resident teacher of Vedanta at Chinmaya Mission San Jose. In 2002, he left the mission and has since been, he has been an independent resource person. Born in the coastal Karnataka, he lives in Solan, Himachal Pradesh. He has written many books, at least 6 of them or 7 of them I know, and Equanimous Mind, Erase the Ego, Freedom in Action, Light on Right Living, Amrita Bindu Upanishad, Reflection of Self-Knowledge, and Mukundamala. With this introduction, I humbly request Swami Chidananda to speak. Hari Om.
Yes. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Tathaya Nijaya Kalusham Harata Karunanidhinaruna Shaila Jusha Kagavahana Bhashita Tattva Vida Vrishavahana Mauna Rahasya Bhrata Ramanena Sanathamidam Vanam. I salute all devotees of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi first. I salute Bhagavan Maharshi for all the light we have received and we will be receiving from this effulgent source that he is. May his grace be upon us to imbibe his teachings rightly, conduct the inquiry properly, and reach the true goal of our life, that is, knowing our own true nature. The Shastras, the Vedas have been unanimous in saying that the goal of human life is to know one's own true nature. What we today take ourselves to be is really not our real self. It's an intruder, it's a phantom figure, it's a bundle of self-judgments. We call it the ego, and erasing the ego is indeed the true spiritual goal and the true goal of human life. This self-realization may have been talked of in different ways in different schools of wisdom. Bhagavan Maharshi himself called it not only Atmanishta or Atma Sakshatkara, but as especially is relevant to this talk, he often referred to it as abiding in the heart. Heart, Ritsthala. This mind of ours gets into so many fancies. When we are spiritually immature, we realize or we find that this mind goes after fancies of the world, sense objects, money, pleasure, and so on. When we get a little spiritually mature, we begin to understand that the fundamental or the primary illusion is what we think of ourselves. This mind conjures up a certain sense of who I am, and we fall in love with that sense of I so strongly, so badly, that our true I remains unnoticed. Maharshi and great seers tell us tirelessly that whether you recognize it or not, you are the pure self. This pure self is also called Hrit Sthala, the place of the heart. And there is an old English saying which was relevant, which was true probably in the good old days when the Roman Empire was at its helm. The statement goes, all roads lead to Rome. All roads lead to Rome. Everybody was so fascinated with Rome, the Roman Empire, the Roman state, and they would go to Rome to learn, to grow, to make money, or whatever. In this lecture, I wish to share some thoughts around not the statement, all roads lead to Rome, but a modified statement, all roads lead to Om. What is this Om here? Om or Pranava, once more, has been given by the Vedas, the Upanishads, as the best name for the supreme truth. Therefore, mind, letting go of its fancies, its illusions, its delusions, and staying put in the pure self may be called a great journey on the part of every one of us, not towards Rome. Leave aside that old statement. It's a great journey towards Om, our own true nature. The thoughts that I will now share with you, which are inspired by the great teachings of Sri Ramana Maharshi, actually revolve around a particular shloka in the short but very significant work Upadesha Sara. Upadeshasara literally means the essence of the teachings. It is placed in one of the works in praise of Shiva by Muruganar, and over there in the story, it's the Upadesha, it's the instructions that Lord Shiva gives to certain householder spiritual practitioners. However, that Upadesha, that spiritual instruction put in the mouth of Lord Mahadeva, Lord Arunachala, is the summary of Bhagavan Maharshi's teachings too. And the verse I referred to is no other than the 10th verse in Upadeshasara, which has totally 30 verses. Upadeshasara is a work that can easily be recommended for lots of beginners on the spiritual path, but that doesn't mean that it's only for beginners. Even advanced students would derive great benefit from Upadeshasara, for this work of 30 verses puts in a nutshell the very essentials of not only the Vichara Marga, the path of inquiry, but also of Karma Marga, which is Karma Yoga, Bhakti Marga or Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, or Patanjali's system of spiritual exercises, and of course, the Vichara Marga we mentioned already. And the 10th verse is such a wonderful verse that at one place synthesizes all these paths. The 4 celebrated paths, which are much discussed in Sanatana Dharma, and 400 combinations, in a manner of saying, of those 4 are all put together here. A samanvaya is done. By samanvaya, I mean Maharshi claims here that all these spiritual paths are not divergent. They seem to be different from each other, but they come together and they bring us to one destination, which is Hritsthale Manasvastata. Manaha is this very unsteady mind of ours. If the mind is made pure through upasana, through bhakti, through good habits, through satsanga, and so on, the same mind becomes capable of freeing itself from the clutches of worldly attractions, bad habits, etc. And the same mind which was so fickle otherwise will be able to stay, not just stay very well, very firmly. The English word stay and the Sanskrit root stha mean the same. One stays means one remains. And in Sanskrit, stha, tishtati, one stays, remains in the pure self, never to be pulled away to one of the countless forms of the ego. I am good, I am bad, I am a loser, I am a winner, I am better than this right side neighbor, but not as good as the left side neighbor. I am handsome, I am old, I am young. Thousands of self-descriptions. I am this, I am that. Some good, some bad, some making us happy, some making us depressed. Thousands of ideas of who I am rise and practically hijack us. That is what Maharshi calls aham vritti. Aham vritti is a thought which describes us in a certain way. Physically, financially, health-wise, wealth-wise, emotionally, whatever. When we describe ourselves in a certain way, we become the limited self. Bhagavan advises us to conduct inquiry. When thought proposes, when thought brings and erects an idea of who I am, which is not the truth, we are not to embrace that aham vritti and go wherever it takes us. Self-inquiry involves our questioning that. If a thought says, oh, my life is a waste, we are asked to inquire, whose life is a waste? And the thought says, my life, who am I? What? Who am I? I am the one whose life has gone a waste. Hold on. Who are you really? So, rather than going to details of how exactly my life has gone a waste, which is adding fuel to the fire, which is promoting and propagating the illusion far and wide, we question the basic presumption. Then, to explain this expression, Hrit Stale Manaswastata, Manaha, the mind, subjected to incessant and persistent self-inquiry, lets go of its extrovert pursuits, lets go of its notions, its conclusions, and swastha. Elsewhere, swastha can mean healthy, swasthya is health, but here swastha. Stha means tishtati, stays, swa means in one's own true nature. And that true nature is also called Hrit Sthala. So, bhakti or yoga, jnana or karma, all of them facilitate a certain journey. All roads lead to Om. Om is that Hrit Sthala. Om is that pure self. What does the 10th verse say? Upadesha Sara, he said, has 30 verses, and I have not come across any other work in Sanskrit literature which has a shorter meter than Upadesha Sara's verses. Upadesha Sara's verses, each quarter is so short, like the very first verse, which most of you know. Karturajnaya prapyate phalam karma kim param karma tajjadam. Karturajnaya, 5 syllables. Karma tajjadam, 5 syllables. Otherwise, very easy are the Anushtup shlokas in Gita, in Vishnu Sahasranama, and so on. Dharma kshetre, Kurukshetre, 8. So, Karturajnaya, 5 only. Like that, this 10th verse, Vritstale manaha swastata kriya bhakti yoga bo dascha nishchitam. 4 quarters of just 5 syllables. What under the sun does the shloka mean? Rastale manaswastata, what we already talked about, the abiding in the pure self which is called our own heart, not the blood pumping organ, of course, not heart as in some other science, but the spiritual heart, from where the limited I arises and then takes us for a ride. Where the limited I, the false I, the ego, has its origin, and upon conducting inquiry, where it subsides, where it goes back and becomes quiet, that source is Hritsthala. Hritstale manaswastata, the abiding of the mind in the pure self, rather than any of the thousands of possibilities of self-description, is the end or the destination of all the paths. Hritstale mana Swastata Kriya. First Kriya is mentioned, then Bhakti is mentioned, then Yoga is mentioned, and Bodha is mentioned. Then it is said, Kriya Bhakti Yoga Bodhascha Nishchitam, putting a stamp of total endorsement or final approval. Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi says, look, whatever spiritual practice you are doing with love, with devotion, with faith, with increased clarity as you go along, will take you to the same goal. All roads lead to Om. In this shloka, we see one magnanimous aspect of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi's avatar, personality, his incarnation. As it is said, Nrunam Nidarshanamayam Bhagavan Rishihi. Bhagavan Rishihi, Bhagavan Ramana Maharshihi, Nrunam, that is Naranam, Nidarshanam. He is the best example for all humanity, if only they have patient ears to listen, eyes to see, and so on. All the more in modern times when, in spite of all kinds of technological developments, humanity again is so divided, they are fighting with each other for economic gains, for religious superiority, for some political dominance, etc., etc. If they were to get the essence of Maharshi's teachings, they would realize that the differences among all is very superficial. We, below the surface, are all striving to arrive at that unalloyed happiness within us, which is the nature of the pure heart, the pure self. Therefore, Maharshi Ramana had no problems, not only with the different paths within the Sanatana Dharma, called Hinduism these days, but also with Christianity or Islam or Sufism or Jainism or Buddhism or Baha'i or Judaism. People of different faiths came to him and they felt so light. They felt that it was time so well spent. They felt elevated in the mere presence of Maharshi Ramana. They did not feel any kind of confrontation. They did not feel intimidated. They did not feel out of place. On the contrary, people adhering to so many different faiths in this world were at home in the presence of Maharshi, whether he spoke or not. There are accounts of many who had come with many questions in their mind. They neither asked the questions and nor was there any need to answer. They went home with no doubt in their mind, for they saw the doubts were so silly, so useless. Therefore, in this shloka, before I say a few words on how Kriya, that is Karma Yoga, Bhakti, the path of devotion, Yoga, the path of Raja Yoga, and Bodha, which is Jnana Yoga, of which self-inquiry is an excellent variation that Maharshi had promoted. Before I go into a little details of those four, I must once more say that in this verse, Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi's all accommodative outlook can be seen. If a villager was worshipping some Grama Devata, some deity in his village, and he has no idea of all the mighty scriptures, Maharshi was not going to settle that villager, or unsettle, I should say. He was not going to unsettle. Na buddhi bedam janayet, says Bhagavad Gita. Maharshi would not unsettle the villager, not create some buddhi veda. On the contrary, with loving eyes, he would look at the villager and say, oh, you are worshipping the Brahma Devata, your village deity. Go ahead. Do it with more and more of pure love. The rest of it will happen. So, the four paths, the four celebrated margas of Hinduism, and so many other spiritual traditions of the world look different, but all of them are taking us closer and closer to self-realization. You may wonder, it is nice to hear this, but how do these four paths take us to one goal? How do all roads lead to Om? Let us explain it briefly. In Kriya, which is Karma Yoga, which incidentally Maharshi explains in 3 verses, which are the first 3 verses of Upadeshasara, what happens is there takes place a tremendous attitudinal shift. In Sakama Karma, desire prompted action, you and I do everything and anything or anything and everything to gratify the ego. What is in it for me? Everything should bring something to me, and money or pleasure comes and goes. But what is sadder is in this acquiring for oneself, the me, the false self, goes on getting strengthened. This beautiful program, 72nd Aradhana Day, is put together by the Arunachala Ashram in New York. Long back I heard a joke about the busy streets of New York. Somebody was going, and in America you have an expression that is, if you get something really free, it's called free lunch. It cannot really be lunch, but in a manner of saying, it's called free lunch. And in this world, when everybody is so selfish, nobody gives anything free. Everything has a price tag. So on the busy street of New York, Manhattan probably, not in Queens, where Arunachala Ashram is located, probably on one of those busy streets, a man was so frustrated with how the whole world was so selfish, and using that expression free lunch, he raised his hands and said, it seems, oh my God, is there a place in this world where we may get free lunch? And to his surprise, he felt a hand on his shoulder. And there was a tall man who said, brother, I can show you where you will get free lunch. And this man said, really? Where is that place where I can get free lunch? And that tall man said, first give me my fees, $10. So that is a description of our mind. That tall man is in you, in me, in everyone. We are always looking for, what do I get? That little I wants gratification. Karma Yoga, which Sri Krishna gives in great detail in Bhagavad Gita, is all about the attitudinal shift. Where Arunachala Ashrama is located, not far from where there is the John F. Kennedy Airport, as most of you know the geography. And John F. Kennedy expressed Karma Yoga in this way. Ask not, he said to Americans, ask not what the country can do for you. Ask what you can do for the country. That is the spirit of Karma Yoga. Without there being any need for more elaboration, when we assume, when we take the healthier outlook of serving people and not insisting on getting something, right away the ego in us becomes attenuated. It becomes smaller, it becomes lighter. And at the right time, a sage, a guru, a luminous figure would smile and tell us, you know, when you have no desire, the way you feel about yourself, when there is no desire, no regret, no anxiety, that is your true nature. When you are smitten by desire, troubled by anxiety, etc., that was a false vision, false experience. Let go of those false states of mind. Be the pure self. So Karma Yoga brings us to the very threshold of enlightenment and rest of it just happens. Oh, so Karma Yoga takes us to self-realization, if not directly facilitating the journey. That's interesting. Tell us how bhakti, devotion, takes us to the same self-realization. You would say, what is bhakti after all? We respect all the paraphernalia, all the ways it is packaged, bhajan, kirtan, dance, nama japa, tirtha yatra, and so many. Fine. But essentially, what is inside this bhakti? Sri Krishna says in the Gita, what matters is your love for me, your bhakti for me, not what you offer, but how you offer. A rich man may offer something in gold, very precious. Somebody else who may not be able to buy such a big thing and bring to the Lord may offer, as the famous expression in the 9th chapter of the Gita goes, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yo me Bhaktya Prayachati Tadaham Bhaktyupahritam Ashnami Prayatatmanaha. Patram, a leaf, Pushpam, a flower, Phalam, a fruit, Toyam, a spoonful of water. It's fine. What you offer is not so important. But the second half of that shloka says, Bhaktya upahritam. How you offer? So Rukmini put a tulasi leaf on one of the pans of the balance, where on the other pan Sri Krishna was sitting. The tulasi leaf made Sri Krishna's pan go up, its own pan go down. Before that, Satyabhama had put so much of jewelry, so much of gold and silver and pearls and rubies and diamonds or whatever. None of them was heavy enough to make Krishna's side go up, right? So that's a story illustration. So bhakti is love of God. More we love God, more we accept God's ways. Of course, with true education in the name of God, how sad there is so much fanaticism in this world. My God is true and your God is false, etc. Rama Rama. What to say about it? That is not religion. That kind of we know God and you don't know, etc., is ego speaking. It is the dirty and dark ego that is talking as though it knows religion. So, more we love God, guided by proper spiritual teachers, what happens is thoughts that construct the ego become less in number and better in quality. Reduction in quantity, improvement in quality, as they say. What is reduction in quantity? In a single day, you and I might feel hurt or insulted. You may grind our teeth to teach somebody a lesson. These are egoistic thoughts. Imagine we get such thoughts 200 times in a day. Reduction in quantity means as there is increased spiritual practice, the number of thoughts, from 200 such egoistic thoughts, we may come to have on an average 20 thoughts a day, then 5 thoughts a day. What is improvement in quality? Earlier, when we had hatred or anger with somebody, we looked at that person as Sakshat Ravana, Sakshat Duryodhana. We labeled him as bad. As there is an improvement in the quality of our thoughts, we may even now feel a bit angry, bit sore with the person. But right then, even as we criticize her or him, a part of our mind says, well, I cannot forget all the help she has done to me over the years, and I know she is so, she or he is so generous at times. In fact, my wife and children are so grateful to him, but I have a problem with him. So, along with the criticism that is rising, when our antakarana is purified, there is also appreciation and praise. That dilutes our jealousy or hatred, revenge, or any other negative emotion. Therefore, bhakti is a great sadhana. Bhakti is a nauka, it's a boat on which we can travel across the river of samsara. The greatest boat is bhakti. Mystics have said to us, it's because bhakti works on our thoughts. It debugs our software. It eliminates evil thoughts. It makes us so pure. I would once more say that Bhakti Marga also brings us to the very threshold of self-realization. Then one wafting breeze pushes us inside the hall of self-realization, which is Hritstale Manaswastata. Kriya, Bhakti, third one is Yoga. I'm sure many listening to this talk are into Yogasana. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. Traditionally, it is called Ashtanga Yoga. It has these 8 steps, 8 limbs. Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi is known for grasping the essence and putting it in such crisp and concise way without doing injustice to the spirit of this particular part. Incidentally, I said something about bhakti. Verses 4 through 9, that is 6 verses in Upadesha Sara, are about bhakti yoga. 1 to 3 are karma yoga, 4 to 9 are bhakti yoga. 10 is a shloka that throws light on 9 verses that are already covered and another 20 verses that are yet to come. So in Sanskrit there is an expression, Dehali Deepa Nyaya. Dehali in Sanskrit means threshold. There's a room, there's a threshold, and beyond the threshold is what you call outside. Outside the room and inside the room are both illumined by a lamp placed on the threshold. Dehali Deepa, the lamp placed on Dehali, the threshold, Deepa, it illumines both sides. Likewise, this 10th verse is an amazing shloka. It throws light on the previous 9 verses and connects very well with the coming 20 verses. So, yoga 11 to 16, or some say 11 to 15, are about Raja Yoga. But Maharshi, I already said, is a master of precision. Precision means accuracy. Precision also means putting something very concisely. Einstein must have thought so much about all the intricacies of what he finally gave out in a simple equation. E equals mc squared is such a crisp equation. Energy and mass are equated with speed of light c coming into the equation. Likewise, Yoga Shastra goes into volumes and volumes. But Maharshi says in the 5 or 6 verses, says that essentially in Yoga Shastra, the emphasis is on quietening the mind. And while there are many exercises to do so, one of the best is breathing exercise. Vayurodhana liyate manaha jala pakshivad rodha sadhanam. And says, if through yoga exercises, asana, pranayama and others, and quite importantly, the way of living and so on, you bring your mind to great amount of calmness, which is like what we said before, reduction in number and elevation in quality. Then pranabandhanat linamanasam ekachintanat nashametyadaha. Two steps towards enlightenment. Step one is do some chosen yogic exercises, make your mind calmer, quieter. Prana rodhana lina manasam. It's called laya. Laya means the mind has not vanished. Mind here by context refers to the ego. The ego has not vanished, but the ego has become quiet, lina, laya. Whereas eka chintanat, that is when a Sadguru will appear in your life as critical input will take place. As your mind has become calm, which is not self-realization, because the mind that is calm can rise, can come back with revenge. So there is second step to be taken. The calmed mind, the quietened mind has to be exposed to the truth of the Upanishads, the great science of self-knowledge, Tattvamasi, that is Eka Chintana. Then the ego is destroyed. So they talk about Mano Laya and then Mano Nasha, which is no other than Ahankara Laya. Laya means becoming quiet. Ahankara Nasha. Ahankara is once for all eliminated. So in a scintillating manner, Maharshi gives, like I already compared, Einstein giving a whole lot of wisdom in one little equation. Here, Prana Rodhanat Lina Manasam Eka Chintanat Nashametyadaha. Therefore, Raja Yoga, call it Hatha Yoga, call it Patanjali Yoga. At the beginning, it may have hardly any semblance with Atma Bodha, self-knowledge. But have patience, get going. As you progress, you yourself will realize that the physical postures or particular breathing movements are not the ultimate. What happens on a deeper level, you begin to doubt the ego. When next time you say, I am hurt, and a question rises in you, oh, wait a minute, am I hurt? Or is it a mischievous thought? Is it just a false propaganda? You know, nowadays with this WhatsApp spreading far and wide, so many videos come to us. Some are true, some are just propaganda. WhatsApp is coming to rule human life. Someone said to me, till recently we were Homo sapiens. Now we have become Homo what sapiens. Shiva Shiva. That should not happen. Instead of going again and again to WhatsApp, friends, you and I should go again and again. Whenever we get 2 minutes free here, 2 minutes free there, we must go into who am I? Our present vasana tendency is, I got 2 minutes free. Let me see whether some WhatsApp message has come. Instead, we may spend a couple of minutes saying, I'm feeling a bit low at this time, but Bhagavan Maharshi asked me to question who is feeling low. And when the answer comes I, he further asks us to ask, who is this I? Who am I? So you shake the very foundation of the structure that thought builds, then see what happens. So pranayama is just a sample. Calm the mind, then get to inquiry. Now, last but not the least, we have Vichara Marga. Classical Vedanta goes into great amount of details of, who is God, Ishvara, Tat. The pronoun Tat refers to Ishvara. Who the seeker, the student, the inquirer is. The pronoun Tvam refers to the Jiva. Jivaha kaha, Ishvaraha kaha, idam jagat kim. So Jiva, Ishvara, Jagat, all of these are here to perplex us. But Maharshi Ramana once more makes matters simple. Of course, those of us who have developed enough of Vairagya, who have a high degree of single pointedness, will be able to really go with Maharshi's crisp advice. Otherwise, though the advice is 100% true, our mind runs here and there. Then we have to first work on the quality improvement program. So next time somebody asks you, are you doing who am I inquiry daily? Suppose you are not, you may give a very diplomatic answer. I am right now doing QIP. QIP means quality improvement program. I am making my mind purer with bhakti, with some studies, with some social service, whatever. Once my mind has enough of Vivek and Vairagya, I am going to primarily be in who am I. Now I do a little, not to get out of touch, but I am not capable. Maharshi has admitted at some place that a lot of Vairagya is needed for the practice of who am I inquiry. So if today we don't have that Vairagya, we must work towards developing Vairagya by various exercises. Lots of exercises, help us. The way they help us is, for example, somebody every few hours does some one or two malas of japa. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. How does that help in developing Vairagya? Well, you are swimming against the current. Generally, every 2 or 3 hours, we tend to go for an enjoyment. Have a drink, have something, gratify the senses, watch the TV, take a look at the internet. Instead, if every 2 or 3 hours you do some loving japa of Panchakshara mantra as an example, then, number one, of course, you have calmed your mind. Number two, your mind will get the capacity to see how money cannot give you true happiness, how sense pleasure cannot take you far, how power, position, fame, name, etc. will not help much. So all this becomes clear to you when you do these practices. Yogasana, pranayama, ekanta, some mauna here and there, and letting go of bad habits, letting go of eating wrong things at wrong time. Didn't Maharshi say when they asked, what is the best discipline? He said, sattvic food in moderate quantity is the best discipline. Then they wanted a little elaboration. He said, moderation in food, sleep, and speech is wonderful discipline. So these are the things that pave the way towards enhanced and intense self-inquiry. Coming to this fourth path, in the 10th shloka, which I took as the basis for this whole presentation or sharing, it is mentioned as Bodha. Because Bodha, Jnana Marga. Bodha and Jnana are synonyms. And in this Bodha Marga or Jnana Marga, the path of knowledge, a variation, like in chemistry, organic chemistry could be a variation. Biochemistry could be a variation. Somebody goes to study electronics and communication and then specializes in microwaves. God bless him. That's a variation. Likewise, in the vast body of what goes by the name Jnana Yoga, this Vichara Marga, who am I? And Maharshi briefly puts it all in 4 verses, or some say 5, 17 to 20 or 16 to 20. Manasam tu kim margane krite naiva manasam marga arjavat. If we inquire, what are these thoughts? Are they real or uh, something else? What is the substance of these thoughts? If we inquire what the mind is, manasa kim, mind vanishes. And it is in the 18th verse that the pranali, the way to go about it, crisply given in Upadesha Sara. Ahamayam kuto bhavati chinvataha aipatatyaham nija vicharanam. Nija vicharanam, self-inquiry. Self-inquiry consists in asking where from this limited I, with its demands, with its disappointments, with its hurt, with its pride, with its hope, all that, where from this limited I, this ego, this little self arises. Ahamayam kuto bhavati chinvataha. For somebody who inquires like that, Oi, an exclamation, oh, you know what? Patati aham. This ego, this ahankara collapses. Vicharam na sahate ahankara. There's a saying. Ahankara, the ill-conceived I, does not tolerate, cannot bear the heat of inquiry. Therefore, calling it bodha. Tatstale manasvastata kriya bhakti yoga bodhaha. It's a jnana marga, vichara marga, nishchitam. Definitely have no doubt about it. Maharshi is encouraging us to go on with our sadhana. Have patience. Do not think of something miracle that will happen instantly. That very thought, oh, nothing has happened, can be an obstacle. Inquire with no expectation. That's once more the spirit of karma yoga. You are serving people, not expecting anything in return. In who am I inquiry also, be intensely into inquiry. Don't ask a question. Half an hour I have been trying to inquire, but enlightenment doesn't seem to have come anywhere near. Shiva Shiva, Arunachala. Don't say that. Sri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that if we let go of that impatience, that anxiety for fruit of action, that letting go of the anxiety for reward, letting go, called tyaga, gives instant peace. 12th chapter, 12th verse. Tyagat shantihi anantaram. Anantaram means no antara, without any delay. But we are so used to always look for some quick result. I believe somebody used to sit for meditation with a mirror by his side. After 5 minutes, he would look at the mirror and look, do I look brighter now? Does my face have Brahma Varchas? Shiva Shiva. Such impatience, silly, so childish. Love God, pray to God, and repeat His name, expecting nothing. Let the so-called self-realization take place like a side product. You are inquiring with all intensity. Therefore, friends, not only this 10th verse, the whole Upadesha Sara is a feast, is a treat, is a handbook with so much guidance to you and me. to get going with our spiritual practice. Kriya, Karma Yoga, Bhakti, Bhakti Yoga, Yoga, Raja Yoga, and Bodha, Jnana Yoga or Vichara Marga. All of them lead to one goal, Hritstale Manaswastata, our mind staying put in deep and steady, unobstructed, unshakable contemplation upon the pure self. Even as problems of the world try to toss us about, if we practice this with proper guidance, that goes without saying, because whenever there is no understanding or guidance, the so-called practice can turn into something mechanical or we may get sleep. Therefore, some satsanga, some modest amount, if not get lost with words and words. In the name of satsanga, go on studying all kinds of subjects, all kinds of terminology, then your English will improve, your Sanskrit will improve, your Tamil will improve, some language will improve if whatever book is written. If it's written in a particular sub language, just a good bookish study will improve your language. Once one seeker confessed before me, Swamiji, I have been doing sadhana for 10 years, but I don't think I have improved. What sadhana are you doing? I asked. I'm reading a lot of books, attending a lot of classes. Oh, so after 10 years, what is the change you discover in yourself? He said with a little mischievous smile on his face. 10 years ago, I used to be very, very sad, but I did not know how to describe it. Now, after 10 years of attending all these classes, I am as sad as ever before, but I can describe that sorrow using philosophical language. What will you say about it? So, mere bookish study will take us nowhere. It will get us caught in the quagmire of words, Shabdajalam, as Viveka Chodamani says. So, without going wrong, let me say, we must conduct self-inquiry, but periodically we must ensure that we are well informed, we have a right understanding of what we are doing, how we are doing, what is the rationale, and whether we are doing it rightly, etc. What is actually its swarupa. We begin in a certain way, but self-inquiry, really speaking, is a search. It's not a japa. It's a search. It's a quest. It can even go on silently without even the words, who am I? Words are secondary. Words are no words. There is a certain search within us. Who am I? So for that right understanding to dawn upon us, a little bit study, exchanging thoughts with sincere seekers or teachers would definitely be helpful. So I conclude this presentation saying, in his broad outlook, very accommodative stance, Bhagavan Maharshi blesses all of us and says, no matter what your temperament is, and accordingly what sadhana you took and are getting going, don't worry. All of them will bring you to the same great goal of abidance in the truth. Hritstale Manasvastata, which we call Om. All roads lead to Om. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Can we ask a couple of questions, Swamiji?
Yes. Welcome.
The first question was, you have mentioned how the mind can be weaned away from the worldly attractions and be made to stay in the heart. And this is the essence of all yogas.
Right.
For beginners like us, Swamiji, how do we continue with our worldly responsibilities and at the same time concentrating on the heart center? Will not the outer works be adversely affected due to lack of concentration?
Actually, there is work, our responsibilities, professional work or work at home and so on. Then there is sadhana. Now the question seems to say, if we get more into sadhana, we may lose the momentum in work, discharging our responsibilities. I would like to point out that in life there are not two, there are three things. One is sadhana, second is various responsibilities. There is a third entity. That third entity is whole lot of useless activities, whole lots of ways in which we waste time, a whole lot of unintelligent ways of living, where something that could have been done in 10 minutes we drag on, or something that somebody is ready to do is asking us to give to him or her, we ourselves want to do. So there are various ways in which there's a third entity where we waste time. All that sadhana needs is, use that time and energy which was getting wasted to be invested in sadhana. Then, rather than our work getting neglected, sadhana will give to us a certain cheerfulness, certain lightheartedness, certain sense of self-acceptance, certain feeling of, my day began well. I was able to sit 20 minutes before rushing to work. I sat 20 minutes in doing some japa or inquiry. So nice. So with that cheered up disposition, we go to work or we take up some domestic responsibility. I think we will do it more effective, man.
Question number 2. Swamiji, you mentioned the quality improvement program. How to increase viveka and vairagya in our lives, despite seeing that everything is transitory, our mind still is attached to money, etc. Can you please again summarize the methods for the increase of viveka and vairagya for an ordinary bhakta in our lives?
Yeah. Perhaps one of the errors that all of us commit is we hear about so many sadhanas and then we get quite confounded which one to do. We try to do too many, then end up not doing anything. Therefore, I would advise that, like in the United States, they talk about a 21 days, program. Take just one practice. For example, Nadi Shuddhi. For 10 minutes a day, there's a pranayama called Nadi Shuddhi. Inhale through right nostril, exhale through the left. Inhale through left, exhale through right. There are YouTube videos about Nadi Shuddhi. If you try to do, and preferably at the same time, suppose you fix 6 p.m. or morning 7 a.m. Try to do at the same time. For 21 days, just say, if I don't do any other sadhana, it's okay, I'll do this. Then a certain quality improvement takes place. Breathing exercises, or you take something else, no problem. It could be study. But one practice, 21 days to the exclusion of everything else. I strongly would say that it's not by wishing to become viveki that we become vivekis. Some exercises are needed. Some concrete exercises. That's called anushtana in olden days. Anushtana. It could be japa, it could be sandhyavandana, it could be pranayama, it could be morning walk, but improve the quality of the walk. Do not listen to some distracting stuff on the headphone. Rather, try to make that half an hour walk one of a certain quietude, certain contact with nature, not to think about problems of life at that time. Therefore, take a practice, keep it up for 21 days. Take a second practice, keep it up for 21 days. It is through certain practices on the ground, that's the ground reality, that our mind gets an ability to select, avoid too many things, take things in an orderly way. Viveka and Vairagya will be over. But lastly, I would say sometimes no Viveka, no Vairagya may show up for a long time. Have patience. What you have done is never a waste. Suddenly there is a tapering off at a different point of time. Sometimes it is, time and getting aged. When we get older, some of our strong urges or anger, emotions, they come down. But whatever sadhana we have done, it did not go a waste. Maybe as we cross 60 or 70, if we feel now I am a little bit, detached. That is the result of lot of japa tapa you had done and felt frustrated about them. Okay. Third
Thank you,
question.
Swamiji. We have run out of time, and
Yeah.
thank you very much. You have been always very kind whenever we have approached, for your eloquence and also for the guidance always. And hope to see you soon. And I hope you will visit the ashram here during your September stay. Pranams to you, Swamiji. Hari Om.
More Ramana.
Hari Om.